Guys, very exciting times. The buys are coming up. We're getting closer to round 13. We're partway through round 8 here, and with this stupid schedule we've got with a gap on Monday, we're popping out this video obviously on Monday night here, and there are still a few games to play, so a few of those opinions may change with injuries, suspensions, and the like. But Mark is here from NRL Fantasy Amateurs, and we're very excited here. He's got this massive buy planner article that he's written. Can't wait for him to explain this, and we'll have a little back and forth on how to get that perfect buy schedule and buy teams going. So welcome, Mark.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to hear. So yeah, we've got up here in his article here, the perfect buy team. So this would be all the best guys that you could slot into your team starting in round 13 to get 13 on the park. And then from there, being able to trade accordingly, using minimal trades to be able to get a full 17 in 14, a full 13 in 16, and going on from there. So Mark, can you explain this sheet a little bit for us here?
Yeah, so basically the idea when I started writing it was to try to give people a guide as to sort of how to navigate the buys. Because obviously the thought pattern is, we've got to save a bunch of trades early so we can just, max trade through the buy and origin period to be able to field the full team or something close to it. But while I was sort of formulating this article, I worked out that you can actually cover the entire period only using 4 trades through the entire, 13 through to 20, as long as you set your team up properly to start with.
That's absolutely wild, hey, to be able to do that. So you'd imagine that most teams are sitting in that low 20s at the moment. You could probably get to this stage where you're in that good position in round 13 with probably like 15 left. If you've set up like yourself early, then probably a few more. But for the majority of players, obviously there's going to be a bit of an advanced way of doing this, and then we'll cover the guys that are a little bit more of a casual fan, casual player. They're probably going to trade a little bit more through that period as well. So we'll cover both guys, and this article is very much in depth. So thank you to Mark for doing that. If you love the advanced sort of, if you want your brain to be a little bit fried reading this the first time and you need to read it multiple times, then this is perfect for you. But we'll explain it in layman's terms as well. But yeah, so if you get through to that with 15 trades and then use that 4, obviously there's going to be suspensions, there's going to be injuries and the like. So you could get through to round 20 still having sort of potentially 5 trades left and then get the 8 from there. So this is going to be awesome to go through, guys. I can't wait to go through this. So yeah, a little bit more of an explanation on sort of maybe those round 13 guys to start off with, and what do you say? Maybe we probably have about half of those guys now, and when would you look to bring them in to start off with?
Well, it's funny. So I obviously did this from the perspective of starting from the team that I have.
Yeah.
So I've actually set myself up. So as it stands right now, with no trades between now and round 13, I have a full 13 and 17 in rounds 13 and 14. So I've already done that plan.
Amazing.
So, yeah. So obviously that's going to set me up really well. And it also, obviously we'll get into it a little bit more, but even it allows you to hold guys like Payne Haas and Nathan Cleary through that whole period without having to get rid of them, because, the thing to keep in mind is it's actually harder to cover the minor buys than it is to cover the major ones. So something like, you're around 14, 17 and 20, you've got to field a full 17, but you've got 3 teams on a buy. So, if you look at say my team, for example, if the Panthers and the Warriors were on a buy and the Dolphins were on the buy, if all 3 of those teams are on a buy at the same time, I'd be missing 7 guys. So, and that's not including any, red dots that you got in your team, like an accidental, Ben Murdoch-Masila prior to the sewer injury or whatever. So,
yeah, that's something I've been speaking about a fair bit, is that emergency and your interchange as well, and how important that can be during this time. So we will jump into some questions now, and then we've got, guys, my team here and where it's at currently in terms of buy players and set up for round 13, and then I've put up a little bit of a mock example as well down below, which is going to be really cool to see potentially where you might be at, similar to a lot of teams out there, if you do make a bunch of trades up towards round 13, and how you're looking for 14 and 16 after that. So let's get into those questions to kick off things. And What do you think, Mark, is the biggest key leading up to round 13 when setting up that squad?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I sort of alluded to, it's probably thinking about it before it gets to round 13.
Right.
And also not forgetting about the round immediately after round 13. That's probably the two, you really need to think of it in blocks rather than and don't try to do it all at round 13. You really want to be doing it, if you spend one trade a week between now and round 13, you can bring in 5 players that are available. Like, you don't need to sort of rush it.
Yeah, so just move down to number 6 here. Do you think it'd be worth doing it slowly now, rather focusing on points for now, a little bit more slowly getting towards that round 13 bye over the next few rounds, rather than just doing it all at once in sort of round 11, 12, 13?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, ideally what you want to do is stick to your criteria for player selection in terms of, you're looking for your value and all that sort of stuff, and job security, which, obviously we've banged on about that. Everybody has, how to select a good player.
Yeah.
So trying to combine that and slowly bring in guys who are going to be available for you over the origin period. You're looking for your cut price guns who also suit your buy schedule. And just do that slowly so that you're not costing yourself points now in order to have cover later.
Beautiful. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And so that's leading up to round 13. What would you say the most important thing? Once you've got to round 13, you've set up that squad from there, that next sort of 6 rounds, what would you say the next important thing is there?
Yeah, it's probably just thinking about it more long-term as well. Like, just for example, you don't want to be going out and jumping on a guy for 1 week and then trading him out again because he's not somebody that fits the mold of what we're looking for. Like, you don't want to be going out and buying a Bailey Simonson because he's available in round 13 because he might dish you up at 12 and you've spent 2 trades. So it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it's just more like still trying to stick within your parameters of what sort of players you select.
Or Hayes Dunster, right?
Yeah, well, Hayes Dunster's a perfect example.
What a shocker that was. I think a few people in both fantasy and Supercoach pumped him in this week and last week. I don't know.
Mate,
bit of a strange one for sure. Speaking of those sort of average, let's say average cash cows, someone that's probably going to make you 50 to 70k, something like that. Cash downs and cheapies during round 13 and 16. Would you just completely avoid that?
No. Yes and no.
Okay.
So, let's say, for example, you take a guy like Jack DeBellin this week, for example. I know he's not a cheapie, but, he's not an elite level keeper and he's not a cash cow. So in another time, you might go, oh, well, no, just spend the extra 100k and get a Tohu Harris who is a top level keeper.
Yep.
But if you can get points and cover and do that sort of thing, it's all right. So a perfect example of that would be Jareen Buller this week, who's lining up, and I don't think anybody in their right mind will be buying him this week. But if he comes out and looks solid, he's a great one because he's available in round 14 when you got a guy like Lockie Miller on the buy, and also available in round 16, 19, and 20. So, he might, even though he might not necessarily make 150k and be an amazing cash cow, if he's a slow burn, 25 to 30, you're buying him at 240k, that's where you go like, okay, I'll have a crack at somebody like that.
Yeah, that one makes a lot of sense. And there's obviously a lot of contingencies to that, and it's the Tigers and everything like that. But there are going to be other cash cows. There will be other cash cows that pop up that will be similar, right? That will be able to cover a position, like you said, the wing fullback that could be tough when you need 3 wing fullbacks in those weeks to fill that 13. So definitely interesting.
Perfect example of that for me is I bought in KO Weeks a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Hoping that he's going to play fullback for Manly in round 13 and 16 when Tom Trbojevic is in Origin.
Yeah, he's one of those guys I was definitely thinking about, and I was hoping that he didn't make a lot of money over this last few weeks, but him obviously missing out on the team has helped me. But I suppose for you, it's not going to matter too much because he's going to be important in that time, and we can pick him up a little bit later. Thankfully, he didn't make too much cash for us. But so yeah, let's talk about that bench and emergency now. I'm going to pop up my buy planner for my squad there, and I'm currently sitting with Murdoch, Masila, and Talau as my worst guys in my emergencies. My sort of after trades this week, my 18th and 19th men are going to be Isaiah Katoa and Alamotti. So not too bad at the moment, which is good. I'm seeing a lot of people, obviously, they might have Talau, Murdoch Masila, Couchman, and Sonny Luke, something like that. So all guys that aren't really scoring too well. How important do you think that those positions there, the interchange and emergencies, are for round 13 and 14? Let's just start with those two.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, as you say, it's going to be hard to execute a strategy of having a strong 13 and 17 if your team's full with guys who maybe, like, you know, we might get to round 13 and, you know, for example, I don't think Sonny Luke or Couchman's going to drop out. He might, but, you know, you burn Murdoch Masila, Jaden Stewart might be back by then, and Murdoch Masila's out, and, you know, then you've got no one there and nobody in 14, and he's not making money and whatever. So, I mean, even, you know, putting aside that, it's critical to have your emergencies making money and being available because, you know, like, for example, in a couple of weeks' time, we've got the Knights bye and the Dolphins bye. I got 3 Dolphins and 2 Knights in my team. Yeah. So I don't really want to be playing Sonny Luke and Toby Couchman in my scoring 17 for 2 weeks in a row while those players are on a bye. Now, obviously, I've been lucky enough that I missed both of those guys, and I sold Ben Murdoch Masila to Jackson Ford a couple of weeks ago. Okay. So
nice.
So I missed all of those, but I've got Isaac Thompson, God knows when he's going to play ever again, and KO Weeks down there. So I've got my own problems.
Yeah. And just a shout out to Mark. He's actually killing it this year in the top 100, right? What are you ranked?
I started this week at 91.
Okay.
I'm currently sitting 215, but I've still got like 9 dudes to play. So
yeah, it's a bit of a weird one at the moment. I think a lot of people have. It's either you've had no one playing this first bunch. Well, it's only been, I can't believe it's Sunday. It's only been 4 games, but yeah, we're making this on Sunday as well, guys. Just to let you know that as well. But yeah, so Mark's doing great, and he still has a couple of issues down there, and great work for getting rid of Murdoch Masila. Just gives you one less headache down there for sure. And I think it's definitely going to, you know, if you're holding both of those guys, I've got Murdoch Masila and Talau and pretending that they're not playing at all over that period. And I think that, you know, over the next few weeks, potentially moving on from Murray and these kind of guys, I could downgrade Murray and upgrade Murdoch Masila or something like that. Given he's, you know, 277k, hopefully he makes a little bit of money this week, but or over the next few, and then potentially moving him on just to, you know, if even if it is that extra 20 points each and every week for 8 rounds, it's 160 points, right? And hopefully some money making from other guys. So it's definitely something to think about for your teams, guys. Okay, so let's talk about that now. How to navigate through those buys with the limited trades. We'll go back to your article, mate, and we'll get to that second picture down there where you've got the key players for overall, which is setting up there for round 13. So you've got a mixture of 6, 9, 12 guys, is that right? To cover from the start, and then if you can talk us through how to navigate that for round 13 and then into round 14 would be great.
Yeah, so essentially there's a couple of teams that synergize really well with other teams in terms of their, you know, weeks that they're available, and also a couple of teams that are available in the large majority of the weeks through the period. So, for example, the Cowboys actually play all 4 of the first major bye rounds, and they just have a little their buys the standalone week in the middle between Origin 1 and Origin 2. So, you know, assuming that you don't have 5 Cowboys, you can run, you know, a Cowboys player through the first 4 weeks without needing, you know, somebody to fill that spot. And they are the only team that does that. So, obviously, the easy, you know, one straight off the bat, and the first player that I landed with was Reece Robson, and I think most serious overall players probably have Reece Robson or are trying to get him.
Yeah.
because he's the easy hooker option for those first 4 weeks. And then as well, he's going to play in round 20. So the only week that you actually need a hooker through that origin period, if you have Reece Robson, assuming that you've got another hooker in your squad somewhere, for that round 15, is round 19, which coincidentally is the only week. Oh no, I think that's 13 as well. So Peter Mamazoulos, who will obviously play hooker on the 2 weeks that Damien Cook is in Origin, is round 13 and round 19. So, you can pick up Peter Mamazoulos if you want for a week and just slot him into that, round 19 week. Now, there is a couple of other guys who are available in that week. Reed Marnie and Api Coruscant are probably the two only other ones that you would want in your squad.
Yeah, and then Api's potentially Origin too, so...
If he's playing Origin, yeah. So I sort of lent myself towards cashing out to Mamazoulos and then just having him as a red dot loop option for the rest of the season at that point from round 19 onwards.
Yeah, that's not too that's not too early, is it? So that's fine.
No, I don't think so. I mean, ideally you wouldn't do that and you'd have another guy in your team, but all the other hookers that you want, they're either on a bye or playing State of Origin. Reed's okay, but God knows what his price is going to be between round 19.
Yeah, the hooking position is ridiculous at the moment. So even Robbo yesterday getting a 50, it was a tough 50. It was a tough 50.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you because obviously we're both Cowboys fans. I was swearing at the TV. Have been for the last couple of weeks. Yeah. So, the hooker position is tough. I was lucky enough to start with Reece Robson, so I haven't spent a trade on the hooker position yet.
Yeah.
And I bought Brandon Smith in last week, so I've got hooker cover for 15, but unfortunately he's on a buy in 19. So
so you definitely got the cover there, which is awesome. And then you got obviously Drinkwater is someone that you've said that is a potential purchase come round 12, 13, and he played great last night as well. Finally, after I started with him. There was a few guys started with him, and to be fair, all of the wing fullback high-priced options were overpriced. We've seen Turbo, Teddy, Manu, all these guys just absolutely upon all of them just crater in price. And it's pretty clear that the correct strategy was, keep wing fullback, gun mids, which is how I started. So
yeah,
you did well with that.
It's pretty clear that was the right way to go now. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so some other...
So the other wing fullback that if you don't quite have the money for Scotty is Kyle Felt, who's down in the mid 300s at the moment, about 350, put up a 45 with a try last night.
Yeah.
He's priced at about 23, 24 and has a career average of 33 at wing, which it's been exactly or plus minus half a point of 33 for the last 4 years, including those terrible Cowboys teams where they were like 15th, 16th. So he's a really interesting option if you just want a guy to plug in your emergencies, but that's going to be available through that period.
Yeah, and you kind of hope that he doesn't really score too many points over the next bunch of weeks anyway. Beautiful there. So obviously, with the guys on the round 14 bye, is there any sort of Seagulls guys you're looking to pick up or not really, hey?
Yeah, no, so I've got Frizzell and Miller. So they were the two of the guys that were critical to this article.
Yeah.
Being that they play 4 of the 6 weeks through the Origin period.
Yeah.
They were two of the guys that were critical for that.
And then would you be looking to have 2 Eels plays as well? Would you be thinking that's sort of the strategy? 3 or 4 guys that are missing in round 14. Would that be sort of max for you?
Yeah. Well, obviously, if you want to field a full 13 or 17, 4 is the max.
Okay.
Obviously, unless you want to spend trades. So obviously, I was doing this with the mind of limiting the amount of trades that you're spending through that period.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've got weeks in my team, so that's one of those round 14 guys taken up. And Madison, so he's my, 4th dude. But as we know, there's a bunch of Eels options. Being, your 2 halves. You got Hopgood maybe coming back there now. Warimu Greg maybe popping up in the cheapy category. And the other thing to keep in mind with the Eels is they are the Cowboys of the second and third block. So the Eels play all of the bye rounds aside from round 14. So they play 5 of 6. So they are critical as well.
For sure. Yeah, so looking towards getting them would be great. Obviously, you can play it either now, in the next few rounds, or after round 14 would be great as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a really interesting thing with, I don't know about you, but my team's just absolutely chockers with edge players.
Yeah, I'm slowly going to get rid of them the next few weeks, yeah.
But, so you guys like, so say, for example, in round 16, I'm going to have Frizzell, Eli Katoa, Preston, and Hosking all available, but I can only play 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because of the restrictions in the position. So what I'd be looking to do at that time is move 2 of those guys on for Eels players, because then they'll be available through the 16, 17, 19, and 20.
Beautiful. That's an interesting one then, because they're all out in round 13, correct? Except for Frizz. What would you be doing? Would you look to move any of them on then, or would you be happy to wait until 16?
Yeah, no, well, like for my team specifically, I don't need to.
Okay.
So I can carry all of those, because you can have 8 guys, 8 red dots in round 13, right?
Yes.
So my, 8 red dots will be Cleary, Payne Haas.
A couple of those edges.
Yeah, and then, a couple of those edges, but all the Dolphins, all the Knights, all the Dragons, Warriors, Eels players are all available, Cowboys. So, there's lots of options there. So you can actually carry a couple of those red dots, and don't be scared to have red dots, because if you don't have red dots, it just means you're churning through trades. And I guarantee you, in the back end, if I haven't spent 4 trades, if I've only spent 4 trades through that Origin period, I'm going to swamp you late. So don't spend them all just trying to move guys. Like, I'll probably have $5 million worth of red dots in round 13. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is what it is, hey, which is fair enough.
Yeah,
that's it. It's a good start there. We're going to get back into a couple of those questions. So, all right, he said, as I said, they're worth trading now to get to our point. So slow and steady, we worked out. If yes, and you make all the necessary trades now, is it worth it if injuries and suspensions come?
Yeah, well, I mean, for a lot of these, there's a couple of teams in each sort of block that's available. So you should be able to pivot to another guy who does a similar job. So, like, for example, let's say Ryan Madison goes down with a season-ending injury, you just trade him to Hopgood, for example. Or, if, Lemuelu goes down or Hammer goes down, you trade it to the other person, or, whoever their replacement is. Maybe Valence Tafare comes in the center or whatever. Like, you don't know. So, a lot of the time there'll be an equivalent sort of player that you can pick up.
Yes, just roll with it. It happens. It's part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll go to the next one. So if you have a pick between 2 players in the same position, 50k difference, the higher price guy, he's going to average 5 points more, which is fair across the season. You're trading them into your side in round 11. The lower price guy, he would only miss one game, from 13 to 20. So pretend it's a Dolphins guy, but has a bye later in the year. So they're both going to still miss 2 games across that period. Would you be going for that keeper? Or would you go for the guy that's going to help you in that bye period, and then you could potentially pivot later?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question. The short answer is it depends on your side. So, if you've set yourself up properly, because you got to remember, if you've got a red dot, you're going to get a replacement as long as you've set yourself up with enough backups. Yeah. So, even though for me, like, Nathan Cleary is on a bye, for argument's sake, in round 13, whoever I'm trading into, like, trade into Mitchell Moses and cost myself 5 to 10 points a week. Mm-hmm. But, I would have just had to play, like, the worst player I think I'm playing in round 13 is probably Weeks.
Yeah.
So, if he's playing fullback for Manly, maybe he puts up a 35, which, we've seen from Moses, he might throw up as well. And then, you're much better off planning better and getting better players than going for quantity just to get a number, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's always been the correct strategy, hasn't it? Just people just
Yeah.
trying to get that amount of players in round 13 rather than and sticking with those good ones. Like you got Payne Haas, he's clearly the best mid at the moment. He's just worth holding the entire time there. And I suppose the general question, obviously, yeah, as you said, dependent on how your team's set up, but Origin players, how many would you say is max? Even in, if you're set up well like yourself, what would you say would be the max for you is? And then if you're not as well set up, what would be the max for everyone else?
I think what we're going to see this year is less players being rested
Okay.
following Origin. And the reason for that is every team's got 3 buys.
Yeah.
So they're going to be rested through the year anyway. There's a couple of teams whose schedule isn't particularly friendly. Roosters, Panthers are the 2 main ones where they've had a really early buy. So they had a buy in round 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 buys are on Origin weeks. So I think we're more likely to see players from those teams rested. Whereas, for example, the Cowboys, they've got a buy in round 15. So, all of those players, like Ruben Cotter, for example, I'm not actually convinced that he's definitely playing Origin, by the way.
Yeah.
But if he is, he's going to miss round 15 anyway. So, he's not going to then be rested again because he's getting his rest at that time. So,
Sure.
well, that's my thought. So what we'll probably see is players from that, like your Payne Haas's, Pat Carrigans, Isaiah Yo's, these type of guys, we'll probably find that they play, but play less minutes instead of just missing completely.
Yeah.
So if you're holding them through that entire period and you're never selling them, it doesn't matter if they lose a bit of cash because you've saved a trade that's much more valuable in round 22 when a bunch of other players have run out of trades and you've still got 7 and you're able to trade those injured players rather than having to play Jacob Host in your 17 for the last 6 weeks.
You had to say it, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh, mate, I've got him. He's sitting he's my 18th man. I'm lucky I did the loophole this week, so I don't have to play him.
But you did grab him. Okay.
I think he's going to come good though. Him and Couchman, I think are going to be fine. By the way, so
that was so rare, wasn't it? Like you just look at it. It was a stats play with Host, and he just had a shocker and didn't pan out. But
yeah, a couple of missed tackles against the Panthers. Does that all happen to anyone?
Yeah, exactly. And then that was it, apparently. So, yeah, Cheekham was the play, apparently. Anyway, all right, last of the straight-out questions here. What's the benefit of a guy playing round 13 and 16 and missing 14 and 18? So, Eels guys, for example, compared to someone who misses 13 and 16, like a Titans guy, but plays 14 and 18. Is there much of a benefit, or, again, is it just more team set up?
Yeah, you need both. Is that, you need to strike the balance. Because if you've got a bunch of dudes who play the major buy rounds but miss the minor ones and you've got too many of those, what you're going to find is you're going to be running 15 players in round 17 where, everybody else has got 17 players and that 2 players that you had in round 16, you don't end up benefiting anything. So you do need to have both. So having Broncos, Panthers, Roosters, it's actually critical to your buy planning, even though not available in those first 2 major buys.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay, guys, we move on to the Excel spreadsheet here. We've got my squad up there and where I'm set up currently, and then we're going to go for that mock little draft at the bottom. So my squad, just as a little bit of a, we'll work this one out along the way as we go here, but I've currently got either 6 or 7 for round 13, which isn't as ideal as where Marky's set up at the moment. But with my poor start, it was, for me personally, it was more about getting as many good points and cash generation as possible, and that's slightly less focus on 13, and hopefully we can kind of play catch up the whole way has been my theory here. But there's obviously a bunch of these guys I'll be looking to move on from. I currently have 4 guys that are going to be in Origin in my squad. So at a minimum, 1's going to go, and that's going to be Murray, just because he's going to miss at a minimum 4 across that period, where the other guys, it's either 3, potentially more if they're rested. So, we're looking at making, it's probably going to be 6 to 8 trades across this next little period to get to that stage. and I have 24 remaining. So we're probably looking at, within injuries and suspensions as well, I'll probably have about 15 left at the start of round 13. So this is where potentially using Mark's strategy there is going to be really important. But we'll look at it in comparison now. I've got 6 playing, as I said, potentially 7, and then currently 17 pretty good players heading into round 14. So if I left it at that at the moment, I would be missing out a little bit there. If we look at the mock one, it's got a mixture of Eels players, Knights players, and also guys that have a bye in round 16 with the Dragons. Birds come into the side, Jack DeBellin, these types of players there. So you're looking at that now, and they would have the full 13 in round 13, which is cool, and then 15 to 17 in 14, and that's only really making sort of 5 to 6 trades, 7 trades over this next little period to get there. So it's just something to really note there, that it is hard to get perfect, as you've said there, Mark, and things will come up, and you may not have the cash generation as well. I tried to sort of make changes to where my team's at the moment to get to this squad. Murray goes down 100, 150k to get to someone, which then means I can upgrade a little bit elsewhere. What are your general thoughts on that second one, that mock there? That seems probably similar to what most teams are going to end up looking like, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you say, you know what you need to do. You need to start sort of moving some chess pieces around, and even for your team, you might even consider moving on from a guy like Payne Haas, because he has made a lot of money as well. That's right. So, if you want to try to build the quality of depth, but you got a lot of other guys there in your Hoskings, Lieros, who are probably at the peak of their cash making too. So yeah, no, definitely, I think a lot of teams will be looking fairly similar to this.
Yeah.
And angling towards having as much cover as possible through that buy period.
For sure. And yeah, as I said, the emergencies for me aren't as bad as a lot of others. So people could be in worse spots. And you're looking at there, in round 16 currently, I'd have 11 or 12 players, whereas making those transfers now down below to get a better round 13 team, I'm currently sitting with 7 for round 16. And as you said there, that's kind of, you're focusing on that first few with an eye on the later ones as well. So you don't want to just lock in all of those Dragons players who play all the way through to 16, because you're making a lot of trades now to get them in, and then you're making a lot of trades in 16. So as you said, sort of trying to catch your tail and making a lot of trades over that period. So as you've said there, just making sure that you have guys that complement each other and getting that position there. So that's where we're saying don't focus solely on 13 and 14. Yes, that's important to start off with, but then you're going to be left with making lots of trades in round 15 and 16 to get 16 good, and then you're probably going to make a hell of a lot of trades for round 19, right?
Yeah, and I mean, another thing that I've noticed while I'm looking at yours is you're in the same predicament as me, where you've got Katoa, Preston, Hosking, and Liero. So you got 4 edges. So even though you've got 11 or 12, you actually don't. You've got 9.
Yeah.
Because you can't use those guys. So, exactly. You got to think about players and also positional cover, which is where, having due to a duel could actually be super duper helpful. Yeah,
for sure. And that's, I haven't messed around with that too much yet, the dual guys that could switch around. But yeah, that's definitely something interesting. It's 9 to 11, depending on how we play around with this. So I really suggest checking out Mark's article, guys. It's going to be really helpful in setting up your squads. I'll pop that link in the description to go check out the website there. So if you don't get in there, NRL Fantasy Amateurs there, or Amateur Sports, what is it? Amateurs, you can say it on there. What is it?
www.amateursfantasysports.com/NRL.
Beautiful. Yeah, you can do a few sports, right? Are you involved in the other sports or just the other boys?
I have a passion project for American football, which Lovely. I'd really like to get off the ground, but there's so many really good creators there, and they do so much research. And the harsh reality is while I'd like to do both, the amount of time and energy that I invest in the NRL, I physically don't have time to do the NFL to the degree to make it successful. But Quinton, who runs the 2 soccer/football, depending on how you feel about the sport, podcasts. So he does an EPL one. He went on a couple of podcasts that big overseas ones for the soccer, and he's really, really into that and really good. And they have a podcast as well, so you can check that out.
Beautiful. Yeah, I know there's a lot of Aussies that are interested in the football there as well. So, all right, let's get into a few players of interest, potentially to target or to hold in your squads. And yeah, you mentioned Widemu Greg there as well. So that would make 9 Eels, and I haven't even got Cartwright in there. So there's so many options in that Eels squad. Let's just go one by one and just give a quick take on all of them. So Madison, any worry on Origin for him?
No, actually, I originally thought that he would be fairly likely for Origin, but one of my interns, Dale, he pointed out some comments that Freddie Fittler made regarding Madison taking the suspension rather than the fine.
Okay.
And he said something to the effect of, I'd never want to play with a player like that who doesn't care about the team and only cares about himself.
There you go.
That
might be it. And
I'd be shocked if he plays at Origin.
That's fair, even with all the injuries. Moses next. Is he someone that's on your target list? I know you've got either Eels half as your options.
Yeah, so the short answer is no, mostly because I don't really like how inconsistent he is for the price.
Yeah.
I have a really close eye. I've almost traded in Dylan Brown 5 weeks in a row now, and I haven't done it. I'm so glad I haven't done it, but I just need to see him score 50. And I'm much more interested in Dylan Brown for the money, the financial investment versus the potential for scoring. But my plan is to bring that player in round 15 and then move them on in round 19 anyway. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
It's going to be a short-term rental for Dylan Brown, I think.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think I've got him longer term now, so that's that. Gutho, any thoughts on him?
I actually, part of my strategy is you can, an Eels wing fullback is actually super helpful.
Yeah.
But if you carry Scott Drinkwater and Buller, you achieve the same result. Okay. So at this stage, I'm probably not going to land with Gutho, although he was in my original trade plan for this article.
Good to know. Sean Lane.
Really, really interested in Sean Lane.
Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of people should be as well. That was a very, for them,
really hot on him. Yeah.
Yeah, to lose
he's
on the weekend and still score well was good news.
Yeah, he's actually so obviously one of Freddie Fittler's things that he does is always picks one person just out of the clouds. And Ryan's tip for Freddie's pick out of the clouds is Sean Lane for Origin this year, though. So
yeah, that's fair. So maybe wait.
I don't think it's going to happen, and he's really interesting. I'd much rather have him than say trying to hold Bryce Cartwright through the period, for example.
Awesome. Penasini?
Zero interest.
Just too expensive, or?
I think what happened is the attack landed over on the right a lot because of the absence of Sean Lane. And I think they're going to start moving back and sort of evening it out. And Penasini's fine, but I don't want to pay 600 and something grand for a centre who's playing centre. I want Manu, Jack Bird, these types of guys. I don't really have any interest in paying mid-sixes for a centre playing centre.
For sure. With Campbell Gillard's injury, we don't know the clear extent of it yet, but Hopgood, a potential returner into our sides?
Yeah, I'm really interested in Hopgood, particularly because he's the only player on this list that has the dual position as well.
Yeah, definitely. Brendan Hands, if he happens to get the Josh Hodgson role or no?
Yeah, no. I think at some point they're going to have to work out that they need to bring Mitch Rain in. So I don't hold out a lot of hope for Hands.
Just doesn't score well enough, does he?
No, he's a Corey Pakes.
Okay.
Not the vibes I'm looking for in my team. Particularly, if you got Robson, you can just skip that headache.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go Broncos now. 3 guys on the list. Reece Walsh, probably not going to make Origin. He's kind of killing us not owning him at the moment, but a low one this week, thankfully, for us. Reynolds and Farnworth.
Reynolds is probably the only player on that list that's of interest to me. I we were firmly and still are firmly in the Reece Walsh isn't a keeper camp.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm still, my flag is comfortably planted in that camp, and I've never considered bringing him in.
He definitely looks like he's an improved player though. That's been the thing, hey? But
absolutely. But their schedule has just been soft as butter.
Yeah.
They've played a couple of teams who were supposed to be good, who weren't good.
Yep.
And like the Cowboys, for example, he's just, and he's saved himself a couple of times. He was on -1 before I put that out into the universe, and then he swamped a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to hit some defensive matchups where they're going to be ready for him, and I think we're going to find that he'll still be fine. Like, I think he's a 45 average, but that's not really what I'm looking for at that price point either. So
yeah, did you say, does Reynolds fit the schedule for you?
Yeah. I mean, I've got Sean Johnson, Cleary, and my plan to bring in an Eels half. So and I've got Katoa at the moment. So at this stage, he's not somebody that I am targeting, but I'm very comfortable that somebody else might want to target him if it works for because just because I've done it my planning way, you don't have to do it exactly the same as me.
Yeah.
Because Broncos are available in 13, 14, 17, 19, and 20, I think. No, not 19. 13, 17, 13, 14, 17, and 20. So, if you have that and then you have one person that's available in 16 and 19, like an Eels half, you could carry, an Eels half and Reynolds and you're pretty much covered. So,
yeah. And Farnworth?
No, same comments as Penasini.
Okay.
I'm looking for centers that don't play center. I'm looking for Hamiso, these types of guys.
Yeah, and then Isaiah Tass will be the same then for Bunnies?
Yeah, 100%.
Alex Johnston, any interest?
No. I don't have...
Wingers even worse?
As a rule, I don't really want to buy a winger ever.
Yeah. Cody Walker, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
made too much.
Is there any guarantee that he's not the? Is he the guarantee? Any guarantee that he's not the Blues number 6?
True. Surely it's Hines if it's not Luai.
Yeah.
Fair.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hame Sele, any thoughts or just too late now?
No, I like Hame Sele. He shouldn't have gone up too much because his break even was sort of fairly high because of the lower score the week before. It was only 14. Yeah, so he's going to be 350. I think that's fine if you're looking for somebody. I'd be more interested in just holding off a couple of weeks and looking for Tavita Totola, though.
Yeah, for sure. Is he finally going to play some
games? He's going to be
poor bloke.
Yeah, at some point he's going to actually get onto the field for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, he's got a 58 break even and 481k average of 20, but he averaged almost 50 last year. So he's he'd be a really good option. Unfortunately, doesn't play round 16, which is kind of frustrating because that's the hardest week to get mids. But other than that, he's a great option.
Beautiful. Move on to Panthers now. Thoughts on Dylan Edwards, Tungo, Crichton, just basically all the outside backs that aren't playing Origin.
Tungo seems to be somebody who's dropped a fair bit in price.
Last few weeks hasn't gone that good. He's had 2 good ones.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping he drops a little bit of money, but once again, same comments as previous. But I mean, Sonny Luke, you'd really like to see him play some more minutes, but it seems like they're just absolutely intent on playing Mitch Kenny for massive amounts of minutes.
Yeah, is he an option, Kenny, or?
Probably not at that price. If you started with him, you can definitely hang on to him the whole way through. But 500k for a guy who has never even thought about scoring 50 points is not really what I'm looking for.
I'm with you there. Okay, it's potentially just holds here, but Perham, Alamotti from the Dogs.
Yeah, I was pretty comfortable with people moving on from both of those players, but if you still got them, they are, guys, obviously they're going to play 14 and 16, which is helpful. So it really depends on your trade position and your other options. Like, I wouldn't spend a trade to go from Alamotti to, one of these previous options, Isaiah Tass, Penasini, etc., because you can probably get similar sort of production or close enough to it without spending a trade. Whereas I would move him on to a guy like Manu, for example, or Teddy, who's clearly a better player.
Yeah, that's simple. So maybe hold one of them. Let's go to the big fellas then. We've got Max King, TPJ, who I know a lot of people brought in this week, and then Preston. Are you one of them? Did you bring TPJ?
I got in Pangai in my head-to-head side. That's not playing overall.
Yeah.
King is an interesting one. He's had pretty inflated minutes. And Preston, I'm looking to hold Preston till round 17 if I can.
Yeah. I'm happy with his score last night for sure. He was very solid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he is. He's just, he's meat and potatoes, 45 to 50 points a week, and then, he'll bang out a try every so often and get you a 60-something, which, at this point in the season, you'll take that considering what you spent on him.
Yeah, 100%. He's almost up 400k now. Sharky boys. Okay. Outside backs, Ramian, Malatalo, Talakai, these type of guys?
So, same comments.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And then Britton Nakora?
He's been an interesting one. I wonder if maybe the schedules had something to do with Nakora, but he's really come into his own as an elite NRL edge player.
Yeah, he sure has. Averaging 58 in fantasy.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of us have about 3 million edges in our team already. Exactly. But come round, he's available 16, 19, and 20. So he could be super valuable later in the piece. Like if you wanted to go from, say, Hosking across to Nakora later or something like that, that would make sense to me.
For sure. I brought in McInnes this week as a bit of a 5-week play. For those that are holding him, great. If there's an injury, a further injury to Finucane or something like that, would he be an option through the bye period as well? At 620k, let's say?
Yeah, if Finucane was out long term, I think he was an option. I'm in the camp that he's gonna get pushed back to the bench when Finucane comes back.
Yeah,
but there's no guarantee of that.
Still.
Yeah, Kafusi or
just start with them.
Royce Hunt or whoever. Yeah.
All right, Cowboys guys. So we spoke about Drinkwater already and Feltz, both potential options. Robson as well, and then Granville. I can't believe that one last night was a bit frustrating. We'll talk. I know on your pod you were talking about him as well as an average potential option. And if he was starting, I probably would have. If I knew he was starting, I probably would have brought him in this week. And of course, he got a 42 for us all that didn't pick him up. Eh?
Yeah. No, he's
so many injuries.
Yeah, they are. They're really struggling through the middle. I'm just shocked that they can't get Sadrugu or Price into the team, but Granville's playing.
And then not play Dunn last night either.
Oh yeah, no minutes. Yeah, and they won, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So and he'll be more expensive now.
Obviously you're looking for him to pick up a dual mid for round 13 because you probably have Robson, but if you don't, he could be a really economical way to cover that hooker through the first 4 rounds. But keep in mind, obviously, a guy like Tomalolo and even his price is pretty low. He's out for a little while, but he could be a renter mid for the first 4 plays there. Or even a guy like Helam Lukey is going to come back in round 10, and he's available through those first 4 weeks. He's a really interesting option at the price.
What about Lukey? I was just going through the team list for this week's games, and Lolo.
And Ruben Cotter only played 1 State of Origin game last year. There's absolutely no guarantee he plays State of Origin. So
I just think he does because it was game 1, right? And then he got injured.
Yeah, he got injured in the warm up of game 2, I think.
Warm up of Cowboys game.
Oh, the Cowboys game. Yeah, was it the Cowboys game before 2?
Yeah, it might have been round 15 or something.
Yeah, so he's no guarantee. I think him and Tom Gilbert are probably battling for 1 spot.
Okay.
In the team. So and Tom Gilbert was awesome last year as well. He'd come on and played 75 minutes straight in his debut, and was tackling like a madman. So, oh my god, yeah, look out. And even they got Hopgood running around, who's an option. Corey Horsburgh's been really, really good.
Yeah.
So if Cotter doesn't play Origin, he could just be an absolute fill-up for anyone that wants to take a risk on him early, because he's going to be playing that 65 minutes from now until then. You know, he might even make 150k or 100k between now and Origin 1, and then if he's not named in that team for that round, he's just going to be an awesome option for round 13. Yeah. So, you know, if you wanted to take a flyer on him, I wouldn't talk you out of it either.
Yeah, it's a nice risk, isn't it? Let's go to Knights. We got Crossland. If you've brought him in the last couple of weeks, he's going to be a clear hold over the Origin period, would you say?
Yeah, or would he get 36? That's fine. You know, he's a cash cow / cover.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously not available in round 14. And the problem is if you get too many Knights,
yeah, round 10 as well,
on top of the Eels that you already want, you're going to end up with not enough in round 14. So
for sure. Frizzell, you already have him, and obviously got some price rise out of him. If you don't have him yet, would you spend the 720 odd to get him now, or just leave him now?
Oh, he's going to go up another 25k, so he'll be 750 when lockout's finished.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd probably be more inclined to invest in a Ruben Cotter, or even, you know, Sean Lane, a player like that. That's, you know, 100k cheaper.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Fitzgibbon over that time, or they're just tough with missing 2 games? No, he's been going well. He's been so consistent.
Yeah, I remember back in the good old days when he used to be a borderline gun, but I can't trust it. But, you know, he seems to be getting a lot of good ball and scoring some tries. He's an interesting, like a pod option, but he actually hasn't scored below 44 all year, which is surprising.
Yeah, so really consistent.
Yeah, interesting.
Lockie Miller then, 2 bad weeks after having an absolute killer month. A lot of people are like, oh, is he a sell? Is he a sell? Is he just one you think will be fine and plug and play?
Well, there's a really interesting argument to move Miller onto a guy like Scott Drinkwater and put 200k in the bank.
In like round 10? Or now?
Yeah, next week. Next week. Yeah. I mean, I'm not doing that, but there's an argument to be made to do it.
Cool.
So, because if they average the same from now on, you spend a trade to put 180k in your bank that you can use to grab Ryan Madison instead of, you know, somebody else, or instead of getting, you know, turning Ben Murdoch-Masila into Brandon Smith to have something actually happening with your cash in your emergencies, that's probably worth it, you know?
Yeah, definitely a good argument either way.
That's probably one for the individual player.
For sure. Dolphins guys clearly holding Hammer. Would you trade him in? Round 12? I'd be more inclined to trade Hammer in than any of the aforementioned genuine centers. Yeah. Okay. So he's definitely an option, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. He's somebody like I'm strongly considering. I've actually decided to not grab Manu this week. And I'm looking at having a Hamaso Jack Bird center combination for the for the
it's pretty
long term. Yeah, really. Like, you got a guy, you know, 2 guys who could potentially average 50 there. Lots upside, but, you know, a fullback and a edge back rower is what you're looking for in your centers.
100%. So Isaiah Katoa would just likely hold him. I suppose there is an argument that he's going to make a decent amount of cash if he pumps out a 30-odd 40 today. They play today, yeah. That you could eventually trade him out, maybe at his buy, or you can hold him to 13 and trade out then.
Oh, mate, I wouldn't be selling him before round 16.
Okay.
16 would be the week that I'd be looking to sell him.
Beautiful.
He seems to be coming into his own. Yeah. I think he's going to land in the mid 500s personally.
Yeah, well, that game last week was massive for me with that 40 in a really bad losing team. Obviously, no Sean O'Sullivan means kicking's going to be there, but his defense was much better, and he's going to get Felice Kafusi now. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. Aiken, obviously, last year was more thought on him. And Lemuelu, are we just waiting on sort of what happens in today's game plus next week as to what we do with him?
Yeah, I've still got him, obviously playing against the Titans, but matching up against...
He'll go to the left, won't he?
Yeah, he'll be on the left, I would think. Yeah. So he'll get... Is Fafita playing on the right?
Fafita is on the left now.
He's on the left. Thank God for that.
Which is good news, yeah.
Yeah, so he'll be against Joe Stimson, which is a much friendlier matchup.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be looking to hang on to him if you can. The Raiders and the Sharks aren't defensive powerhouses either. So, if you can hang on through to at least around 11 bye and reassess, that's probably the best way to attack it. But then they've got the Dragons without Ben Hunt in round 13, which would be great if he's still in the edge back row spot there.
Beautiful. Let's move to Titans now. Do we think that Fafita is a lock for Origin or no?
I think Fafita is competing for a jersey.
Yeah, because he's got buys 13, 16 anyway, hey, so.
Yeah, doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Would you consider him this week or like next week or no?
Once again, it comes back to how many edges have you got in your team already?
That's right, another edge.
But the short answer to the question is yes. He's a really interesting option. He's a pod at 7.6%.
Yeah.
He hasn't scored a try yet this year, but he's averaging 60. He's somebody that's in my head-to-head team, but not in my overall team.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, good. Tanner Boyd, is he just going to be a hold over the period or can he be moved on to?
Yeah. I'd probably be hanging on to him. No reason to sell him with a 26 break even and starting to come good.
Yeah. There's a little bit of chat about potentially Brimson moving into the halves. If he does, then Campbell, would he be an option or no?
If Campbell holds the spot indefinitely, he's a really great option. But as you say, not available 13, 16. But, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I think he's going to find himself back on the bench, though, personally.
Yeah, fair. Big risk. Fodawaker, heard you guys speaking about him a fair bit as well. General thoughts?
Yeah, Ryan's really hot on Fodawaker. I was like a 6 out of 10, like a slightly above lukewarm on him. I was much more interested in Jack DeBellin.
Yep.
But I see the benefit. I was the OG Fodawaker truther, by the way. So
okay.
I was talking about Fodawaker before PVL ball was introduced. I was I was the original lover of Fodawaker. It just seems that his minutes fluctuate, and he has the odd game where his PPM's just absolutely terrible, which sometimes happens. But yeah, I think he's going to be a borderline 50 average. I have him more in the 48 to 51 than the 50 to 53.
Yeah, you want to be high, don't you?
Range.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Tigers now, all the forwards basically. Clemmer, Bateman, Papali, Offhang, Any thoughts on them?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we can get a trade deal done between the Cowboys and the Tigers to get Joe Offengawi in trade for Tom Chester or something.
Offengawi, I rate him. He was great last year.
Yeah, I'd love to get him at the Cows and send them Tom Chester, solve their halves problem / fullback problem, and get a middle forward. But no, Clemmer and Bateman are both guys who I'm seriously looking at. Obviously, if I'd love to get Papali'i, but he's just so expensive. But yeah, they're really good because they're available in 16, 19, and 20 and missed that round 17. So the other teams that miss round 17 aren't like overly fantasy relevant. The Sharks, but they've only got, assuming that you didn't go for McInnes, they've only got Nico Hines. And I think the other teams, like someone not very good.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't want. Who was it?
Can't remember.
So I closed my sheet.
It's all right.
I'll tell you in a second. Oh, the Bulldogs. Yeah, so obviously that's just Preston and maybe Pangai by that time, unless you've got a Matt Burton. But it's very easy to avoid those round 17 teams and only have like one or two of those guys. So yeah, I think Clemmer in particular has really dropped in price. And given that they're carrying Tommy Talau on the bench and they're running a second hooker, I think Bateman and Clemmer are the two guys I'm probably going to land with at some point.
Okay, beautiful. Manly guys, Ruben Garrick, and I had Paseka in there, but he's probably less of an option.
Yeah, Garrick's an interesting one. I'm really hoping that he stays on the wing though and Weeks comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's an interesting one, how they play that. Likely, Weeks probably... Would he end up in the halves or would they go Johns and Schuster?
I think it'll be Johns and Schuster with Weeks in the one, but they might opt for some more experience there with Garrick. If Buller guns it this week, I'll probably just trade Weeks to Buller and just alleviate that headache, which will allow me to pick up an extra Eels player like a Sean Lane or something like that and probably be better in the long term.
Cool. All right, last few to go through. We've got Roosters, Joey Manu. He's a clear buy at some point, right?
Yeah, he's really interesting. I'm looking at him in round 16, but I don't have any problem with anyone buying him any time between now and round 16.
Yep. Brandon Smith, you've got in your team, you said, and he's a
Yep.
solid option. Potential, some
love
cash to
him.
make and then cover.
The great thing with him is he's mid eligible and hooker cover for Robson. So you can play him in the mids in round 16 where there's like hardly anybody
Yeah.
in the mid.
Yeah, I think I'll be looking at him at some point. Angus Crichton, potentially, if he doesn't play Origin, could be an option for us as well. Just keep him in your thoughts.
Yeah, I think he is going to find himself back in the Origin team, assuming there's no hiccups between now and then.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to note is it's perfectly possible to buy James Tedesco and cover him through the Origin period as well.
Okay, cool. That's how I've got Teddy at the moment, so I'll kind of work that out along the way. Dragons, guys. Sloan, would you hold him if you have him?
I think so, given his, last week. It'll be interesting to see if his price rises get blunted by the Roosters this week.
Yeah, surely the Roosters come good.
We'll see how that goes. Yeah, well, I've still got them. I'd still be tipping them to be the premiership favourites at the moment, even though they look really clunky.
Yeah, crazy.
So
that's that. Yeah. Let's go. So Bird's a clear buy. We already know that. We got the Couch. He's a clear hold, right? You think he'll come good?
Yeah, so I think what we're going to see is obviously last week he played limited minutes, but that was because of the shenanigans with the lost interchange, I think.
Yeah.
Where they had to run that, the forwards playing a few extra minutes as the starters. I think what we're going to find is he's going to play a couple of minutes in the middle, probably like 10, 15 minutes in the middle, and play the 20 minutes on the edge that Murdoch Masilla doesn't play till Sewer comes back.
Yeah.
So we're going to see some nice price rises for him, I think.
Beautiful. We'll move to Storm. Eli Katoa, hold or sell? You fine with that?
Yeah. I've got him as a preferred hold.
Over
but
Lioro.
You really only can hold one of Katoa, Preston, Hosking, and Liero once you hit round 16. So
he's the preferred hold.
Probably just for upside. I think the Storm have been pretty average, and he's been 50 average. So I'm looking to see a big performance for the revenge game this weekend.
For sure. Warbrick, hold or sell as well?
I moved on from him a couple of weeks ago, and anytime you're ready to sell him, sell him.
Yeah, beautiful. Josh King, and then Nelson and Welch, if Welch doesn't make Origin.
Yeah, I don't really have any interest in any of those guys at all.
Easy. That's fair. I think they're kind of borderline guys. Warriors, we've got plenty of options here. Johnson, Ford, and Harris, all three happy to hold or buy.
Yeah, great options, I think. Johnson. Yeah. At this stage, I'd probably be more inclined to be aiming at a Reynolds or something like that.
Yeah, just too expensive. Harris, we're looking at him, post their buy?
I'm comfortable with any time from now because they're round 12.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't have too many worries, that's okay.
Yeah. Having those three would be fine. Johnson, Ford, Harris coming up to their buy.
It's as long as your emergencies are good.
Yeah. Beautiful. And then the other guys, Tom Ale, would you be avoiding him now? Yep.
I think Ale's going to find himself in reserve grade once Barnett's back.
Yeah. And then Tavanga, AFB, and Curran. Any thoughts on those two?
Yeah. I think they're all just going to cannibalise each other, and it's pretty clear that Ford, Johnson, and Harris are the options in this Warriors team.
Beautiful. Big thank you to all of you guys for hanging around for this long. We've got our last team now before we let Mark go and enjoy his Sunday, but we've got the Horsbra, Corey the Horse. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, if he doesn't play Origin, he's really interesting, but as a rule, I avoid any forwards in green jerseys.
So Tarpany, we're going to avoid as well?
I might make an exception for him depending on where his price gets to.
Yeah, if he gets low, he's going to be tough to leave out for sure. Matt Tomoko, people might own. He's probably going to be a hold. I know Mark doesn't like the centres. And Fogs, any thoughts on Fogs?
Yeah, he's a really interesting option at the price.
Cheap.
If the Raiders come good. So I could see myself doing that, but I mean Dylan Brown's fast heading towards the same price, and I know which of those two I'd prefer.
Yeah, that's pretty simple there. Well, Mark, a big thank you for being on here. As I said, guys, you know where to check him out and the rest of his boys out. It's a really fun podcast to listen to. 2 per week, I believe. One as a review, and then a big one heading into each round. So check out their podcast. plenty of good information. They're all very, very good players. So, lots of good content creators out here, and it's good to have Mark on for the first time, and hopefully we have him on again. I might be able to join them on one of their pods as well.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks for having me. And hopefully I didn't keep you on too long.
No, you're good stuff. Have a good one, mate. Cheers.